Almost from the moment of birth, Iranians are taught the defining principles of their culture. Values handed down to us over thousands of years. These are the pillars upon which Iranians believe one builds not only the best possible character, but the best possible society. These defining principles: pendar neek, goftar neek, kirdar neek. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Elsewhere in the teachings left to us by our ancient sage, Zarathustra recounts to us the marriage of his own daughter, and in perhaps the earliest such example in known history, makes special mention of her right to choose her own spouse. Iranian history is littered with examples of high-achieving women: landowners, scholars, monarchs, and military leaders. The notion even of the Amazons, a legendary society depicted as having been ruled over and protected almost exclusively by a tribe of fearsome, nomadic warrior women, has had its origins attributed to Iranian folklore, and it is even argued that the word Amazon itself is a cognate of the Persian phrase hamezan, which means all or entirely woman. The origin of the word for woman in Persian, zan, is etymologically identical to that of the word for life, zendegi. These examples reveal the extent to which the Iranian psyche is at odds with any ideology which seeks to oppress women, or to prescribe rulings which classify them as of lesser value, or to denote them as intrinsically less worthy than their male counterparts of equitable treatment in this life and the ultimate reward in the next. The recent tragic death of Mahsa Amini in the custody of the Islamic Republic of Iran's so-called morality police is a high-profile example of the contempt with which women are regarded by a violently oppressive regime, intent on subduing the right of the average Iranian citizen, and especially of its women, to self-determination and freedom of expression. For any and all who dare to deviate or express views which challenge those of the authority have been violently suppressed in a term which now spans 43 years and counting. Mahsa Amini's death prompted a major public outcry and has sparked protests not only across Iran but around the world, amongst the Iranian diaspora and non-Iranians alike, touched and unified by the story of her callous murder and of the ongoing plight of the Iranian people. I consider myself as having been born in exile, into a society which, although far from perfect, has extended me the right to express myself freely and without the fear of corporal or capital punishment for speaking against perceived injustices, a right which is protected in law. For this reason, I acknowledge how much easier it must seem for me to appear before you and to say these words, while those in my motherland who dare to speak out place themselves in clear and present mortal danger. It is only when I try to envision how different my life would be if this privilege were revoked that I truly appreciate its importance. The Iranian spirit is a resilient one. It has persisted for thousands of years and withstood existential challenges. Its flexibility and capacity to bend and adapt under oppression is symbolized by the botejere, a pattern known in the West as paisley, depicting a stylized cypress tree, bending but never breaking, a symbol of humility, strength, and resistance. For too long now, the Iranian spirit has bent under the yoke of an authoritarian dictatorship, a legacy of naive and misinformed choices made a generation ago, before my lifetime and before the lifetime of the majority of Iran's young population. To those of you who, like me, live outside of Iran, both Iranian and non-Iranian alike, I urge you to be the voice of the oppressed. The three principles of good thoughts, good words, and good deeds cannot actualize the best of outcomes in isolation. There are no truly good utterances or actions that are not preceded by righteous thought, and no thought alone can be considered good that remains unspoken or fails to be acted upon. It is for this reason that I am compelled to express these thoughts and take this action to speak out against the oppression of my people. I say these words to you now so that I can look into the eyes of my wife and my mother, and one day into the eyes of my unborn daughter, and say I stood up for what was right. I implore you to be the mouthpiece of those who have been censored, not only by way of intimidation and threat of physical punishment, but now by strategic internet and communications blackouts, in a bid to prevent the organization and orchestration of internal protests and to restrict the dissemination of content from and to the wider global audience. Please make it your personal responsibility to recirculate, repost, and react to everything you see on social media that shines a light on what is happening in Iran and on the crimes of her oppressors. Share the stories of those who are fighting for the rights of a nation, of a civilization, and for the oppressed everywhere. A word to the oppressor. To those who act unjustly, and to those who assume to impede, intrude, impinge, and impose on the personal and spiritual affairs of others in the name of their ideology, an ideology from which you have arbitrarily inferred moral authority and cite a divine mandate. I assure you, there are no divine mandates for the purveyors of oppression and cruelty in the name of religion. Those who propagate injustice must inevitably face the day of reckoning, and what could be more appropriate than to be brought to account by those over whom your oppression has loomed largest? Each society must establish its moral framework, but surely, in a modern society with representative governance, this must be done through a process of introspection, discussion, and consensus, and not by the edict of a puritanical dictatorship. To my fellow Iranian men, we do not protect women by disempowering them, by micromanaging their conduct and attire, and by shrouding them from view. We protect the women in our lives and in our society by celebrating their self-sufficiency and independence, by trusting them to honor us the way we honor them. We protect them by bettering ourselves and policing our own undesirable tendencies. We protect them by educating our sons to do more than objectify women, and by teaching them to stand side by side together in the protection of our long-established cultural values. To the women of Iran, I am in awe of your courage. You are our mothers, our sisters, and our daughters. We stand with you. Fight the good fight and know that your courage is inspiring people around the world. We will continue to protest in your name, in the name of Mahsa Amini and all of the other heroines and heroes of freedom who will not be forgotten. You have endured far too much for far too long. You deserve better. And in the words of people much braver than I, Zan, Zendegi, Azadi, woman, life, freedom.